recording the Zoom.
Oh, okay. So Eric, if you remember the basic run is we'll do the intro again. Talk about how we got into the film, and for you being on the ground floor of that will of course be of great interest. A quick synopsis, a bit with the actors, a bit on the design, and then to the philosophy of holding your insurrection, I guess. So,
Okay.
Are you looking up a year there?
Yeah, I've got a pretty obnoxious opening I'm going to do.
He's got an obnoxious opening. Okay. So I guess we'll just go on and get into it then. So,
in the year 2021, insurrections are a thing that fascists do, but they used to be pretty cool.
Oh, okay, because I glanced at your phone and I saw the Capitol riots.
So this year, the word insurrection, that's just where my brain goes. But up until January 26th of this year, my brain would immediately go to Star Trek if I heard the word insurrection. So
yeah.
Hopefully my brain will go back that way again soon.
Today's film, Star Trek Insurrection, is hopefully a more moral and successful insurrection than that particular one we've experienced in 2021. Hi, this is Matt.
This is Luke.
Welcome to the Sci-Fi Sanctuary, where we will be talking about Star Trek Insurrection. We're happy to have a returning guest today. We talked to him. He was the writer of yesterday's Enterprise. We got down deep into that. On this one, he was working straight up with Michael Pillar, who was running the ball on this. So hello, Eric Stillwell. Glad to have you back again.
Thanks for having me.
And I think it was an email or something else, but did I hear you say you actually had to straight up type the book about the production on this one?
Yeah, Michael decided to write a book about the making of Insurrection because as you know, Michael was the producer on Next Generation who had opened up the script submission process to freelance writers, to anybody who wanted to submit a script. And we used to get thousands and thousands of submissions, plus endless questions about writing for television and writing for Star Trek specifically. So Michael finally decided he wanted to write the ultimate how to write for Star Trek book for all the people who were interested in what goes on in the process behind the scenes. So when he started writing the book, he would dictate all the chapters onto the little micro tapes, and I would have to sit there and play it back and type it up.
Oh, I had one of my university jobs. I had it for 1 week because I hated it. That was I'd have to just read textbooks for the blind. Just you can't watch anything while you're doing it. You're reading the book. You can't listen to anything you're recording. And I don't know, dictating in that way, I'm just wow, that is a task. So applauds to you for that.
Well, and it was sort of painful because you have to constantly be backing up the tape because you didn't understand a certain word or something, and you'd have to listen to it 20 times. And finally, Hey, Michael, what are you saying on this tape?
And that makes my brain hurt even more. So all the congrats. I guess Luke and I will tell you how we first saw this film, and then you can maybe tell us a little more about how this film actually came to be. I was a young university student buck taking my lady to the movies and decided to go full geek and go to this one on opening night. So I actually, we're still on Facebook. So I went ahead and I said, what do you remember about me taking you to the film? And I have to read that response verbatim, which is, haha, I definitely have no recollection of watching any Star Wars movies. So I guess it didn't wow me.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I took my wife to see The Madness of King George for our first date. So
anyway, this one, I mean, I guess Insurrection sometimes gets some shade for not being the one that wows you, but I don't know, I go back and watch this film a lot. Maybe it is a glorified 2-part TNG, but hey, I like to watch a 2-part TNG, and this one really hits the spot for me. So, Luke, it's been some time since you actually had this one in your view.
Yeah, so I watched it when it first came out. I wasn't taking any girls to see it because I was 8. But then I watched it again when, back in my teen years, I bought all of the Star Trek DVDs myself. And I think I'd watched it since, because I'd been very, very slowly making my way through TNG and putting off watching any of the films until I finished rewatching the series, which I just finally did this year. So this was my first time watching it, having conclusively watched all of TNG. I probably had already seen all of it, just not in one continuous run. And I can see why people say it feels like more like a TV episode than a film. I think we've both got different theories on that, but I like it. I like Star Trek, and this was just a nice big chunk of Star Trek.
See, that's the argument that I used to make at the conventions when people would make the same argument that it doesn't feel like a feature film. I'm like, but you loved the television series, which is why you want to go see movies about it. So why do you want the movies to be completely different than the television series? I never could understand that. I even told Michael when he started developing the story, I'm like, every Star Trek movie starts off with, the Enterprise is the only ship in the quadrant. I'm like, can we just not do that again? Like, why does it always have to be like the cataclysmic end of the universe and only the Enterprise is there to save the day? It's like people really enjoy the series, and the series wasn't like that on a daily, weekly basis, you know?
Yeah, one of the things I really like about this one is, like you said, it's some crazy cataclysm, and this one they're called to this job, but they're basically just exploring, which kind of is the point of Star Trek.
Well, one of my favorite kinds of Star Trek plots is what this film does, and that requires there to be other members of Starfleet around, which is where Starfleet isn't perfect, but Picard or Kirk pushes them to be what they should be. And that's what this story is. And that's my favorite kind of Star Trek.
And ironically, Star Trek Into Darkness, one of the JJ movies, has the similar theme. And when Michael first started writing Insurrection, it was the working title was Into Darkness because he wanted to emulate the original movie about Into Darkness. What was that movie? The Vietnam War movie.
Okay.
Apocalypse Now.
Huh?
Apocalypse Now.
Yeah,
or that's Heart of Darkness, right? So then it's Apocalypse.
Heart of Darkness, right? And that was his general concept with the original drafts of the movie, was to do the Heart of Darkness kind of story.
I guess, can you give us a little more of that ground floor info, like how this movie came to be? I mean, I guess it was like I remember as a teenager thinking that next gen films were like locked into the Bond schedule now. It's like one year I'm going to get a James Bond film, the next year I'm going to get a Star Trek film. That's like how my brain ran. So it's like this one was on its way, right? So
yeah, I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember why Ron Moore and Brandon Braga didn't get asked to write this film, because they had done the first two films, but they may have been doing Mission Impossible at the time and weren't available. So when Michael was asked to do the film, he was very excited about it because it was his first feature film that would actually get produced. He had written other feature films, but this was his first one to be produced. So they were trying to come up with a theme. And at some point, I think Michael always loved to bring personal experiences into his storytelling, so that he could write from a place of reality, something that he actually has experienced. And he and Rick had Rick Berman, they had many conversations about what the movie should be about. And I think Michael was also experiencing some issues of his age when he wrote this movie, because Hollywood is very tough town for middle-aged writers, and they always want to make the deal with the younger writers and the new up-and-coming writers. And so when you get to a certain age, there's kind of this constant battle to be relevant in Hollywood. And I think that's where this notion of the aging idea came from. I think Michael in his book said he was looking in the mirror and in his bathroom at home one day, applying his hair growth formula, and suddenly he had this revelation that maybe that's what the theme of the story could be. But the original drafts weren't anything like the final version of the movie.
Yeah.
And
I seem
there
to
was
remember reading something about like Riker like crash landing on Romulus as like one of the first drafts.
I don't remember that per se. I do remember there was a fantastic storyline involving Worf and a half Romulan, half Klingon villain character that was really it was a great story, but I guess Patrick Stewart really didn't like it, the focus being off of him. So and the ironic thing was Patrick was in Australia at the time filming Moby Dick, and so they had to keep sending him drafts of the script across the international date line. So we would get notes back from Patrick that were dated before we had actually sent it, which was kind of funny because he was in the future or before. I don't know. It was one way or the other, but kind of like us right now.
Yeah.
So it was funny when Michael was writing the book and he got permission to include some of the feedback from Patrick in the book. We had to explain in the notes of the book the reason why the memo from Patrick was dated prior to the draft date because of the time zone differences. But
no, I've again, doing this podcast, I certainly have some time zone differences blast me in the head. So
Matt had a small panic attack just now because my computer that we're using is on UK time, and he was convinced that you were at the same time as that. He's like, "Oh no, I've misjudged it. We've got another hour." No, I'm pretty sure the clocks change in the UK before they do.
I wish we were on the same time zone as the UK, because then the British television channels that we get wouldn't be on so late at night. But the interesting thing was I was confused when I got the Zoom in, because I'm like, so I did a Google thing that said, what time is it in France when it's 5 p.m. in Tokyo? And it said it would be 10 a.m. Tuesday morning. And I'm like, so is this Monday or Tuesday? Like, is it Sunday where you are?
No, this is Monday. This was actually
Okay.
like, for me, this one was like less of a headache because I was like, oh, it's like actually the same day for once.
I don't know why it was telling me that it would be the next day.
So yeah, so this is not a time travel movie, but we can certainly throw some temporal headaches on you with it. So
Yes, I'm going off.
Anyway, we'll get a little deeper, and I'll do the quick plot synopsis, and then we'll spoil everything for everyone because they should know it already.
Yeah, after how many years?
Yeah, exactly. Here we go. Commander Data is on a covert anthropological team observing what appears to be a pre-warp civilization called the Baku. But you can't trust an android because when this one malfunctions again, it reveals the team to the natives and holds them hostage. Data's home ship, the Enterprise E, is off exploring or something when it gets a phone call about its renegade robot. Captain Picard would prefer to pick up the damaged goods himself, which he pulls off with a cunning plan involving a returning Commander Worf, Gilbert, and Sullivan. With a few moments to breathe, the Enterprise crew uncovers a plan that elements of the Federation, along with a shady alien race called the Sona, plan to serendipitously, why did I put that word in here? Serendipitously relocate the Baku and then siphon off the radiation that is blessing the planet's home team with eternal life. Once the Enterprise crew figures out the hustle, they are recalled. Picard transforms into movie Picard, defies orders, and tries to take matters into his own hands. The rest of the Enterprise crew is game, so as Commander Riker takes the Enterprise out to play the most dangerous game with some Sona ships, Picard leads a team onto the planet to shepherd the Baku to safety. Along the way, they discover that the Sona are in fact advanced age Baku that had been exiled from the planet long before for being terrible. Sonar ships explode while Picard has a death duel with Sano Mastermind, F. Murray Abraham, or Ruffalo if you're checking my memory, which ends in the offending radiation collector exploding. All ends well, especially since Picard has plenty of shore leave saved to do his Riker impression with a handsome Baku lady.
Serendipitously, serendipitously, serendipitously.
Yeah, you know I can't say words.
Yeah, neither can I.
Yeah,
Now that I've been learning French, I can barely remember English.
I'm so used to talking to children who it's a second language that I am really bad at remembering complicated words.
I think I said
speak to
before,
everything
I used to know some German, and now when I try and think of like a German sentence, like when I don't know a word, I'll put like the Japanese word in there. So it's like even more wrong than it would have been in the first place.
I do that with German too, because I took it German in high school, and then when I can't remember a French word, I couldn't remember the word for room the other day in French, so I'm like Zimmer.
Exactly.
I learned French, Spanish, and German in school, and I think I can remember "Hello, my name is Luke," and that's it for all three.
So onto this film with the actors. I guess with Generations, it's like a big deal. I mean, this is Patrick Stewart on the lead. It's they're going to the movies a little bit with the original crew. First Contact, it's their first foray, on their own. And this one, well, it was it routine actor-wise at this point?
Is Frakes the first actor who got to direct more than one?
Nimoy.
But Nimoy didn't, did he?
He did 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Oh, because I thought Shatner kicked off because I thought Nimoy didn't get to do more than one because...
No, Nimoy did 3, 4, and Shatner was like, I gotta do 5 or I'm gonna my head's gonna explode.
Oh, okay, right.
so Frank should be number 2 on that. But
okay.
I would say he made more of a career for himself as a director.
Yeah, well, you think of him as a director now, right? He directed.
Yeah.
Who can forget Thunderbirds? Wish I could forget Thunderbirds.
I still like to watch that one day. I haven't yet.
Like I said, if we're going to do Thunderbirds for the podcast, we'll do one of the puppet ones first.
Yeah. I know we've already said you were sending some messages back and forth with Patrick Stewart. If you want to elaborate on that, or give us some heads up on how the other actors ended up in this movie, we would certainly be game for that trivia.
Well, I'm pretty sure that Patrick Stewart also negotiated himself an executive producer title on this movie. When you're in demand, you can get whatever you want. I remember Patrick always felt like in the feature films he wanted to be more of the action hero character rather than the, staid British captain on the bridge who does everything by the book. So you can tell in this movie he definitely has that action hero segment. I even read about it in your little stream of consciousness. Yeah, you said.
I like
that's one element that I recall, and I know that when I told you about the original storyline with Worf and the half Romulan, half Klingon character, which I thought was a fantastic story. But Patrick at the time, I recall him specifically saying that he hated the Romulans and they were the most boring aliens that we had ever encountered. Which I then found extremely ironic when they did Star Trek Nemesis and the whole damn movie is about Romulans. And not only that, the entire first season of Picard is about Romulans.
You hate. You have to face it. He hated the Borg. He hates the Romulans. He's got to face them.
Maybe he's come around on it since, but yeah, because I actually really liked the Romulans.
I think the rest of the cast, everybody wanted to do the movies. I don't think there was any struggle getting any of the cast. I thought it was fun that they had a cameo appearance for Will Wheaton finally. So I don't think there was any issues enticing the cast back to do another movie. I think by the time they got to Nemesis, Brent was kind of tired of he was kind of doing the Leonard Nimoy syndrome. I am not Data. And then later on, writes the sequel biography. I am Data.
Well, he's been on the show again, so he seems
Yeah.
pretty game for that. I'm using
Apparently,
a
he's
lot
coming
today.
back in the next season as well. So it's interesting. Maybe not as Data, but
Because there was also the new Noonien Singh character in Picard as well, so I guess he'll be coming back as him.
Right. That's what I would
Yeah.
assume. Or you can have like hallucinatory datas if you want. I mean, that's pretty much well established at this point.
Well, now that Picard's an android, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe Data's like an engram somewhere in the back of his mind. That's what's fun about sci-fi. You can go anywhere you want.
I did find it odd in this one. He's back to doing the very naive young Data, but he looks kind of old now.
Yeah, they do kind of drop the whole emotion chip on this one a bit.
Well, they have that throwaway line, he left it at home.
Oh, right, okay. Because I know Nemesis, they write novels where they explain why he doesn't have it anymore.
I think it's difficult when you're doing the feature films because there have been so many episodes of Star Trek to try to do anything entirely original. So to me, the movie reminds me of Who Watches the Watchers. And I've never personally, I've never been fond of the Starfleet conspiracy stories because I think it goes against the grain of what Gene Roddenberry wanted the future human race to be about. So to me, to have like evil conspiring fleet admirals, and it happens so many times, just on Next Generation and then in the movies, I don't think that was something that Gene Roddenberry would have really liked. So I've always shied away from those storylines.
I don't like if Starfleet itself is doing which this one they do imply that Starfleet had approved of the project, but I like the stories where an individual captain or an individual admiral is wrong, but Picard comes along and he really gets Starfleet and he does it the right way. Which even TOS had a few episodes like that, where Kirk meets another captain and Kirk does the right thing and they do the wrong thing, which was what I thought was going on here. But then he says, no, Starfleet approved all of this, which is a pretty grim message.
Yeah.
I guess that's one of those things where, one more pass on the script, you could have fixed that.
But between this and then the Borg stuff in First Contact, it feels like they were trying to say, and that this was all happening at the same time as DS9, that it is like a darker era in the Star Trek timeline. Like it's not the sort of super utopian TNG Star Trek at this point in time, which is a shame because that's what I like seeing these guys operate in.
Right. Well, the Enterprise itself at least operates that way in this movie.
I mean, that was always a challenge for the writers, and when Michael wrote his book about Insurrection, he had a whole chapter about it called Roddenberry's Box. He felt like they'd been put in this box of rules that Roddenberry had created, where like all the characters on the Enterprise are friendly co-workers and there's no arguments or disagreements, and so that's very difficult if you're trying to write a drama about people. And so that was one of the reasons when they developed Deep Space Nine, they had so many alien characters on the show, like the Bajoran first officer and Odo and all these Quark, so they could create more natural conflict between the characters without violating Gene's idea that Starfleet and humans and the Federation are all above that type of petty conflict that that was sort of the dream of Star Trek and one of the appeals of the original series. I think people thought, in the future we're going to be better, we're not going to be killing each other all the time, and so a lot of that sort of seeped back into the formula.
Before we move too far on into a film, I the guest cast here is maybe First Contact is a mind blower, right? This one, it's mostly, I guess, F. Murray Abraham, who is of course well known for being Solari. Am I saying it right? Solari and Amadeus, a fantastic actor. And I guess, I don't know, for me, like there are other good roles done by character actors, but he's clearly the one that kind of sticks out the most for this particular one.
The two that stood out for me were actually Donna Murphy, and I've just looked at her IMDb. The reason she stood out for me is because she's in Spider-Man 2. And then the Admiral himself was played by Anthony Zerbe, who's the leader of the council in the Matrix sequels.
Oh, right. He was very good too. I might have mentioned him, but I didn't know the actor's name. So
yeah, so they're both just they're playing the type.
Yeah.
But because they've done other big genre roles, they stood out to me. Also, they weren't under like an inch of makeup.
Exactly. So Abraham definitely made the mistake of not going all Malcolm McDowell and being like, hey, don't put a bunch of makeup on me. He was clearly in that chair for quite a long time.
Yeah, for sure.
It was a little cool look though.
He was in the chair on screen and off screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we got 4 hours of him in this chair. We might as well film it and put it in the film.
Yeah.
Let's peel that skin off.
But yeah, that still, I guess I can't get a facelift because I've seen this movie.
The image of the face warping like CG is definitely one of the images that stuck with me since I was like 8 years old. It was that, and for some reason it was Data's head floating in when he had the invisible suit from the neck down.
Oh, I like that.
Those two images have been stuck in my head since I saw this film back when I was 8.
It's definitely a different perspective of seeing a movie at that age.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Get a little deeper into the design and stuff. Of course, the Enterprise E is the same Enterprise E we saw in the last film. I like the village in this film. I thought it was cool. It's a good, like, I mean, I guess it's kind of a standard Star Trek village, but it seems to hit the nail on the head pretty well.
But maybe it's a Star Trek village with a slightly higher budget.
Yeah, but it kind of melded, like, there were a few like kind of Arabic motifs, a few like, sort of Italian motifs, just kind of a fun, conglomeration of those sorts of things.
It looked like a picturesque place to holiday.
Yeah.
I love that location. They filmed at one of the lakes out in the near Calabasas, and I got to go out to the set a couple times, which was fun because usually you're stuck at the studio and don't get to go on the location shoots. And what's interesting is they literally just built that whole village in the middle of nowhere. And I think I went out towards the end of the shoot for that segment of the movie, and they had these giant pallets of river rocks just sitting around like 3 feet tall for all the paths and things that they had built. And I said to the set guy, I'm like, what happens to all these rocks after the movie? And he's like, oh, we just throw them out. I'm like, what? I'm like, you don't put them back in storage at the studio or something? No, just get rid of them. I'm like, well, I'll take one of those pallets of rocks. So I actually ended up building a water feature in my backyard up in Santa Clarita with all the rocks that I got from the search. A waterfall with a fish pond at the bottom.
Yeah, waste not, want not, right?
Matt, you were wondering if the like snow-topped mountains in the background were all real.
I think they really went on location up in the mountains. Whether or not every single scene was literally the background, I don't know.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, the spaceships flying in
weren't
real either.
They did film it on location up in somewhere in California.
I'm an East Coaster, right? East Coast US, you got to drive quite a way to get different scenery. California, not so much. I mean, we live in Japan now; it doesn't take so long to find a completely different vista, but if you're from Atlanta, Georgia, you're going to be doing quite a bit of driving to see something different.
I used to joke with a friend of mine from Baltimore that she had never seen a mountain.
Now, Atlanta, we just have one big weird mountain, Stone Mountain, with Confederate generals carved on the side. Yeehaw.
I'd barely seen mountains until I moved to Japan. Now I'm obsessed with them. So
Japan's nice. You look at the mountain and say, I think I'll walk up that one today. So
that's what I do.
But that is the great thing about feature films is you've got a bigger budget, so you can go on some pretty cool locations for filming.
I guess First Contact had a fair amount of CGI, but this one definitely, I guess, pushed that button a little harder. The Briar Patch has some, this is the point of CG where people were still like really having to think about what they were doing. So, it looks cool, like the venting and moving around the. I don't remember what the Techno Talk particles are, but those things.
Probably neutrinos. Just kidding.
Yeah. Sounds good to me.
I assume the spaceships were still models.
I don't think so. That's in the feature film here. Well, I couldn't positively say, but
right.
I wasn't involved in the post production.
I think even DS9 had gone mostly digital by this point. So
because this isn't that long after, because Independence Day, it's all models. I guess this is only 2 years after that.
Yeah, that's a
you have to film. You have to consider how quickly the technology was changing in the industry. Because if you remember, the very first time we saw like facial morphing was in that Michael Jackson video, and that then became like a standard thing with Odo on Deep Space Nine. It became an everyday thing. So that happened pretty rapidly.
I guess this is one I know seeing in the theater when it came out. This is a time when it was like, oh, this digital is really like upping the game before people got lazy about it, I guess.
But yeah, I was watching it last night, and there wasn't an effect shot in it that didn't hold up. Apart from maybe his weird little pet thing.
I was just gonna say that was one of the cool things in the movie.
It looks super cute, but it definitely
and those little butterfly things that were floating around.
Yeah, the hummingbirds and stuff look good. But his pet, it really reminded me of something from like Galaxy Quest. It just had such a 90s creature design to it.
Well, these films were released within not more than a year and a half of each other, so.
And of course, when I see stuff in movies like that, I always think the licensing department needed a toy.
Yeah. If I can buy a toy of the weird little animal from Star Trek Insurrection, I probably will.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't think this. I was like, oh, they didn't have toys for this, but I was like, oh wait, when I was like 8 years old, I had the whole like first season TNG crew in plastic molded form. So
well, last time we talked to you, you mentioned that you couldn't find an Enterprise C, and since then I bought Matt one for Christmas.
No, he said he didn't find one that you had to build. You didn't have to build. So
Matt has to build his.
I still haven't built it, but I almost don't want to because every morning I open my closet and I get my clothes, and the Enterprise C is also there. So once I build it, the box will be gone.
I mean, I could not throw the box out.
I just leave the box here. Yeah.
I wanted to bring up before I forget that I got to be involved in a lot of things with this movie, like when they were trying to come up with the title. I can't remember what the original title was going to be, but Rick wasn't really fond of it, so he wanted everybody to like submit ideas. So I got to submit like a whole list of ideas. I don't remember who finally came up with Insurrection, but we had quite a little contest going on coming up with the right title for the movie. But there were all sorts of interesting things that I had also suggested. Maybe they should try to use a pop song in the final credits of the movie to reflect the relationship between Picard and Anij. And the idea that I had, which I thought was the perfect song, was Viva Forever by the Spice Girls.
I was about to say the Spice Girls was going to be my choice at that time.
and Rick Berman completely dismissed the notion at the time, and I just thought, you guys just missed an opportunity here. And then I feel like now in the new movies they have Beastie Boys and all the music, and I'm like, you guys should have listened to me back then.
No, I was gonna like not rebut, but just follow up your suggestion with, or it could have been a Spice Girl song, but you just went straight there. You blew my mind.
Well, maybe you should play that song on your show, because it's the perfect song if you listen to the words of it. It's like wanting to live forever and being young again, Viva Forever, blah blah blah. It's like it's practically written for that movie. And like, and of course the Spice Girls were huge back then, so it would have been a perfect end title sequence for the movie.
Maybe I'll do my cover version. You up for backing vocals?
Yeah, definitely. I was about to suggest the same thing. I would have loved it if there'd been a Spice Girls song in a Star Trek movie, just so I could.
I saw Spice on opening night, man, with my freshman college tour.
Maybe your girlfriend would have remembered the movie if there was Spice Girls at the end.
No, this was the sausage party. This was my freshman college dorm. Yeah. Insurrection was a proper date.
Okay. I know, but she might have remembered the movie if there wasn't something Star Trek in it.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, when we mentioned Into Darkness a little bit already, and I did see that. It was like a preview in Japan, and I went in there and I just had oh my God, my manager was there, who I'm like, why is she at a Star Trek film? And then, because she's super into Benedict Cumberbatch. That's why she's here. So it just like blew my mind. But yeah, sometimes it's weird. Yeah, something like that really will get other people into it. So. So hey,
well, I got to see the Insurrection. I got to see the Insurrection premiere in Las Vegas. They had it at the old Bally's Hotel on the Sunset Strip, and they flew everybody. They didn't fly me, but they flew a lot of the cast and studio folks out there. Paramount apparently has a private jet, so some of the producers got to fly on that. And I remember in the opening of the Screaming Cherry, Lansing, who was the head of the studio, came out to introduce the film and mention the writers and producers. And I remember she mispronounced Michael Pillar's name, which was so embarrassing. Pilar or something like that instead of Pillar. But what was really cool was I got to ride in this limo with Michael's family, and his mother-in-law was an actress from the 50s, and this woman, her name was Sandra, and his wife's name was also Sandra, so her mom's name was also Sandra. And so it was funny riding in this limo, because if you could imagine that Marilyn Monroe had lived until she was in her 60s, this was Sandra's mother, and she was typical of that time frame from the 1950s. She had done some movies and stuff, and she just looked like she could have been Marilyn Monroe in another life. And here I am riding in a limo to the movie premiere of Star Trek Insurrection, and it was so Hollywoodish. I thought it was fun.
Was that tied? I'm just curious. I've only been to California one time. I met my friend in San Francisco. Our destination was Prescott, Arizona, and it was like we could go the Los Angeles loop, route around, or the Las Vegas. I chose Las Vegas because I wanted to do the experience, Star Trek: The Experience, right? I think it was 2002 or so. Was that? Yep. Did that have anything to do with the? Did they link that in with the premiere in Vegas?
I don't recall that being involved, but there was a separate time when the experience first opened that they had this huge blowout party in Vegas, and I was at that as well. But one of the most embarrassing things happened to me on that night at the premiere of Star Trek: The Experience, because you remember when you go on the ride and the shuttle at the end crashes back into the basement of the Las Vegas Hilton?
I do. Luke doesn't.
And then you get out, and there's like a janitor, and he's looking like all shocked. I thought the actors were so amazing because he actually looked like he was the janitor at the hotel, and then I was staring at him so intently that I like walked right into one of the slanted door like frames and like banged my head like so hard that I got this huge welt on my head. So they were all the hotel staff were freaking out, and they were like, "You have to sit down. We have to call a doctor to come and look at you." I'm like, whatever, it's not a big deal. But they made me sit in a chair right at the entrance of the whole place with all these hundreds of people at the party. And everybody was there, all the cast of Deep Space Nine, all the cast of Next Generation. Everybody was there, and it was just so stupid that I'm sitting there with this giant lump on my head because I was mesmerized by the whole experience.
What's
pretty
supposed
cool.
to mesmerize? I still, to this day, I'm really not sure how that transporter effect worked. So, props to that.
That was cool. That was cool. I love that place. It's too bad that they closed it down.
Yeah, it's a shame I never got to go. See, I'm in my head, I'm picturing that the welt on your head just turned you into a Klingon.
Well, if I had two, I could be a Ferengi.
Yep.
Yeah. You need a warp core breach from the bar. That's what you needed.
Those warp core breaches were amazing, weren't they? It's gigantic globes of alcohol. Dry ice.
Good times. That was a cool place. Yeah. We that's where that little lawn, after the 90s Trek Renaissance, but before it got back on the horse, that's when it kind of just went out. That's too bad. I mean,
the food was even good.
It was. I'm a guy who wants to go back 120 years and go to Coney Island Luna Park too. So lost. Well, you've got your Mickey Mouse there, so you get the theme park vibe. Part of the magic. Right.
Coney Island is on Stillwell Avenue.
Oh, is it? Okay. I went there and I guess it's 2002. I made sure to ride the Cyclone, and then I had a neck ache for 2 weeks.
I've never been there. I've
Okay.
always wanted to go. It's on my bucket list.
No, I'd ridden the Georgia Cyclone. We had a Cyclone in Georgia for many years. Like, I got to ride the real one. Hurt my neck, and then later on, when internet reviews were more easy to find, it was like, oh yeah, the Georgia one's actually kind of better, even though it's not as classic. It's a smoother ride. So I learned that the hard way. Where were we? Insurrection, yes.
So Riker and Troy got back together.
And Riker lost that beard. See, this is the weird, confluence of time where you see Jonathan Frakes beardless since what, 1987?
And I until I read your little stream of consciousness, I completely forgot about that. I wanted to watch the movie, but I don't have any of the DVDs anymore. I thought it was on Netflix here because we get some of the Paramount Plus stuff on Netflix here because it's not some of the streaming services aren't available, but they only have the new movies.
Yeah, we get that for the new shows and the new movies, but
and worked on the movie is that does us, so whatever.
But I thought the wedding scene was pretty cool.
I think that's next film.
Which one?
The wedding.
Oh, the wedding's the next film. Yeah. So
I'm confusing what movie I worked on.
Because in my head, I'd remember they don't get together at all until Nemesis. But no, they start hooking back up in this one and they get married.
Maybe that's where Will Wheaton was.
Yeah.
I'm confusing the movies.
And
I'm just disappointed that they never have a Beta Z wedding.
and unfortunately for Will Wheaton, I think even his cameo is actually a deleted scene on Nemesis. And sorry, I interrupted you. Naked Beta Z wedding, just to.
I think the actors would have done it 15 years earlier.
They could have had like the the 80s fern just placed in the right spot. It could have been like sort of that Austin Powers thing. That would have been awesome.
There is CGI now.
Yeah. Austin Powers did it without the CGI.
I'll do the Beta Z wedding if you CGI a 6-pack onto me.
Yeah, I love it. Every time there's a Betazoid wedding, they never. It's even her mother on Next Generation gets married and has some dress on, but I'm like, you Beta Zs.
Real Beta Z weddings are for the novels, of course.
I bet they could do it in the new shows.
Yeah, they get away with it.
They're dropping F-bombs all the time. They can show us a bum.
Yeah. I don't think we've seen any Betazoids yet in these shows. No. They're just waiting for that opportunity. Oh no, I guess we should look into the insurrection itself. I mean, I'm talking like as in like, justified, not justified. I think we're all pretty much on the justified page, but just the fact of trying to show, a rebellion of this sort in a Star Trek film. That's the main point of it, which is, as you said, against the Gene Roddenberry grain a bit. But I think they played it
I don't
pretty
think
well.
Gene would have been against the notion that that Picard and his crew would start an insurrection against something evil or bad. It's my issue is just that there was the bad to begin with. Like that Starfleet again, how many times is it corrupt and weird conspiracies going on? I mean, it happens so frequently now. It's like, is the whole Starfleet just bad?
But it's like your same point about Data. He breaks and goes wrong and does something evil so often that it's like, well, actually, maybe it's not safe to keep him around.
And I was being snarky. It's obviously justified in this case because he discovered the conspiracy, got damaged, and then did things weird. So it's a justified malfunction in this movie. Not like the time he just straight up steals, the Enterprise D or something.
But it's just the nature of long form episodic storytelling, right? If there's got to be a crisis every week, if you actually step back and look at it, it's pretty insane that all these people are still alive.
Yeah.
How many near-death experiences does it take? No wonder they need an on-board counselor.
I did note, well, I don't even think I put this in my notes. I might have a little bit, but I did note once Picard gets out of his Starfleet digs, he's kind of going like Han Solo with sleeves for his look.
Yeah.
I was going to say commando, but I guess that's not the right terminology.
I don't know. Luke might like that better.
Yeah, but he didn't strip down to just his Y fronts and paint himself, so he's not quite commando.
Yeah.
I've seen people argue both ways in terms of who's actually right in this film. Because if you look at it from a relocating a people to steal their natural resources angle, then yeah, Picard's definitely in the right. If you look at it as taking medical technology and taking it from the privileged few to share with everyone, then maybe the other guy was actually right. But they could just build a little retreat somewhere on the planet and then everyone wins.
Yeah, I mean, you can visit the planet anytime if you want.
Yeah.
I guess you get overpopulation at some point, but
right.
Yeah. Guess I haven't thought about it that deeply.
I think I'm ripping that off from a tweet that I read. But watching the film, you're 100% on Picard's side. You're like, what these guys are doing is not acceptable. Yeah. They need to be stopped.
I mean, isn't that the same theme in the James Cameron movie with the blue people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I liked your title.
Movie with the blue people.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, in both cases,
Lieutenant Uhura.
Yeah.
This could easily be the new Risa.
Yeah. I was going to say, in both cases, I think the hero's only really doing it fancies the woman.
Doesn't it not work when you're not there? The aging thing.
It only works when you're there. That's why I was like, I guess they get overpopulated with people just wanting to be there. But it reverses. You go out, you hang out for 3 months, you leave, you're good to go.
This would be our chance on Star Trek to see like a limited visitor visa. You can stay here for 12 months, then you're out.
You could do horrible things here. Get a disease and you'll rejuvenate and lose it.
Yeah.
New Risa. Yeah, that's why Riker likes this place. What do you carry on Risa? Horgon, is it? Yeah. They can have their own version of that.
I have a little Horgon.
Do they work in France too?
I don't know.
Not since
I got it from a Rod Roddenberry party in Las Vegas.
Okay.
We'll just leave it at that. Just kidding.
Well, hey, we're Horgon-less here, so
put your keys in the bowl and put your Horgon on your shirt, and you're good to go.
Insurrection could have been so many other movies.
Yeah.
But
my head was trying to make like an insertion joke, but none of them will work.
Anyway, it's hard.
Well, trust me, there were.
Oh, I'm sure that VHS tape exists. Yeah.
But yeah,
Insurrection.
Yeah.
I was keeping back from making that joke for the past few minutes, but yeah, cool.
We can edit that out.
No, definitely not.
that doesn't get edited. Let you pay for it. But it is hard.
So what is your listenership? What is the?
Most of our episodes are listed explicit. It's fine.
But how many listeners do you have?
Not huge numbers. Matt got asked that by a potential guest, and they turned us down. So obviously not enough.
that was from the other podcast that has less listeners, but
yeah, somewhere in the triple digits. We're not huge.
But yeah, we'll see where we roll from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was gonna say it's hard not to come down on Picard's side. I mean, I guess that's, you know, good actors, good characterizations. It's like, no, you cannot not go with Picard, like, in the context of this movie.
Right.
And I don't know, I don't know if someone else has something great, which is what the people with the Baku have, you just can't take it. You can't take. I mean, that's where, you know, I'm not like a religious dude, but you don't covet other people's things, especially if you're going to take it by force.
Well, the real Starfleet thing to do would have been to land on their planet, be like, hey, we come in peace. You guys have got your thing. Can we have this section of the planet on the other side of the planet that you're not going to notice us?
Instead, they made a duck blind that they hoped no one would notice, and rolled from there.
We come in peace. Shoot to kill. Shoot to kill.
Exactly. So,
well, because I've just recently watched the whole series, I'm not good at remembering episode names, but it's the episode with the Native American planet.
Journey's End.
They tried to relocate them because of the Cardassians. And there's also the one where Worf's human brother secretly steals other people and puts them on the holodeck.
I'm not surprised I can rattle off episode titles.
So I feel like a bit of those came into this film a little bit.
I mean, when you said Native American planet, my brain was like Kirok.
Like
the original Star Trek series.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I know there's been a bit of not quite criticism, but people have noticed that there was the moving the Klingon. Was it Worf's brother? Is it? Yeah, move. It's been a while since I've seen that one, to be perfectly honest, but it's kind of the same conceit of sticking him on a holodeck, moving him where you need to go, and then offloading him.
Every Star Trek movie basically takes something from one of the episodes and expands on it. Like even Star Trek: The Motion Picture, people say is basically the Nomad episode.
Yeah, or the pilot of what was going to be that 70s show, Star Trek style.
Then Wrath of Khan is like straight up a sequel to Space Seed.
That's a sequel, though.
Yeah,
somewhere else. So yeah.
Okay, but Darkness is just Space Seed.
How original can you be, though?
Yeah, when there's 10,000 episodes of Star Trek.
No, there's really.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying all the movies do it a little, so I don't see it as a criticism of this film.
There's only like 5 stories anyway that Hollywood tells, right? So you finesse them and make them as interesting as possible.
Definitely.
So it's oh my, again, I as a young lad on a fun date with this one, and I'm like, this movie's 22 years old. Ouch.
Yeah.
But how does it hold up today? This is not one of the Star Treks people tend to watch. It's one of the Star Treks I tend to watch, and I bet a few other people too. Nemesis, I straight up usually avoid unless I'm just really hankering to, just have another bout with it. But Insurrection, I really enjoy. This is a warm blanket of a movie for me.
I find that when it's mentioned in Facebook groups and stuff, it actually gets a pretty fond response from a lot of people who say it's one of their favorite movies.
Well, just now I opened the IMDb to look at the actors, and the critic reviews are really low. It's like 6s and 5s, but all the user reviews are really high. It's up in the 80s and 90s. So I think I'm going to fall down the same place I did with Generations, where I can see why people were disappointed when it came out in the theaters, because it wasn't different like First Contact was. But now when I just watch it as some Star Trek, it's a really good 2 hours of Star Trek, and that's all I want.
Yeah. I guess it goes back to that concept. I don't remember you taking me to a Star Wars film. like if you're a hardcore Trekkie, this really does hit all the buttons quite well. And if you're not, it was like, I guess that was nice. Like I could have gotten like, oh God, I don't believe the time we saw that ridiculous sci-fi film. So it wasn't that strong. That's good, I guess. I really enjoy watching this one, but I'm also
it's better than Star Trek 5, right?
It
But
is.
we're the two guys who like Star Trek 5.
We are
But it
the
is
guys-
better than Star Trek 5.
But Star Trek 5, there is a little bit of like just a little ironically like it. Like
Yeah.
for that one, like I like the clunky effects. I like the fact that these guys in their like garage in New Jersey had to work this stuff out. You know, I'll allow for that. I'll allow for the fact that, you know, Shatner wanted to be a captain of the mountain and all that. This one, I really don't have like a ironic criticism for it. I do like it quite well.
It also continues the trend of so far, because I've always heard about movie Picard being this ridiculous action idiot. Hasn't lived up to that. Like Generations, he's purely just film Picard. First Contact,
TV Picard, you mean.
yeah, TV. Yeah, sorry, he's TV Picard. First Contact, he's doing action hero stuff because he hates the Borg, and that makes sense for the character. Here, he does a little bit of action hero stuff, but most of the film he's not trying to kill anybody. He's stunning or he's shooting drones, and he's only fighting to do the right thing. He's not just being a gun-ho lunatic.
Okay, the last test will be when he's driving that ATV.
And now, yeah, I'm thinking like, is this all just coming from Nemesis? Because I do remember there being a pointless car chase.
I mean, I think the worst thing one of the bad things about Nemesis was that weird filter they put on the camera that made it look like it was sepia or something.
Yeah.
It was just like, what is going on? I mean, like, you know.
Yep. But overall, I think for me, the only reason Insurrection feels like a TV episode is because everyone's having a good time.
Yeah, it's just fun.
All the other TNG movies, Picard's miserable. There's this one, we actually get to see him, you know, he's out in the sun, he saves the day, he gets a girlfriend.
And my question about the girlfriend is, what's up with Beverly? Like, is she or isn't she?
Well, if they get together, they're just going to divorce anyway, so he might as well, you know, go on with the Baku lady, right? Can you stop time? She stops time. Can you stop time?
Every now and then I've done something really stupid and time has stopped briefly while I think I'm going to die.
Okay, I'm just going to
So
say...
maybe Beverly could have said, I can stop your artificial heart.
I'm just going to throw in, I you know, when I wake up a little earlier, I'm supposed to, sometimes I try and like induce a dream. And since I just watched Insurrection, I found myself in a lucid dream and tried it for myself like yesterday morning. And it was cool.
Okay.
You know, so the movie inspired me a little bit.
Well, if you couldn't get the Spice Girls, you could always have got a bit of, if you could turn back time.
Oh yeah, if you can find some way. It's Share. There is Share on a battleship. There it came out. Okay. Yeah.
Imagine her video on the bridge of the Enterprise.
That would be. Does it still have like the guns? I feel like that's necessary.
she turns to Picard and says, "Resistance is futile."
I want to see Cher do that. Yes, of course. So as the guy who, you know, spent a few years as this as your job, how is it holding up for you, Eric?
The movie?
Yeah. Watch it. Well, I know you didn't just watch it, but you lived it, so in your mind. So.
I've seen it a few times over the years, and I think I still enjoy it. It's entertaining. It has nice visual. Here's the bells. Can you hear them?
Yep.
There we go. We got them in now.
Must be 11 o'clock. No.
It's time to evacuate and go on a death march to the caves.
But yeah, I think the movie holds up. I mean, there's definitely movies that I'll watch over and over, and Insurrection is one of them. Nemesis isn't.
I concur. Like, honestly, I think I've actually watched this more than Generations and First Contact, just because it's just a fun one to just go live in for an hour and a half or in a little change.
In your experience, has the reaction to it changed over the years?
I do feel like we were talking about earlier that now when it comes up in different Star Trek groups on Facebook, there's a lot more fond reaction to it. And I think it's the same reason that you said, it's watching it on TV is a different experience than being all hyped up to go to the movie theater to see a new Star Trek film. and I think maybe in the theaters it was a little bit disappointing, which doesn't make it a bad movie. I know Michael was obsessed with the bad reviews coming in. That's all in his book too. And speaking of which, Michael's book was finally published by his wife.
Yeah, I did read that one twice to just show you how geeky I am.
Well, it's a huge book, right? And the ironic thing was, when Michael was writing the book, he was under contract with Pocket Books to publish it officially through Paramount. And then when he decided to share it with the studio executives, including Sherry Lansing, to make sure everybody signed off on it, there was a mid-level executive at Paramount who took objection to Michael talking about the early screening of the film with Sherry Lansing and some of the feedback that the executives had provided, which I don't remember the details, but they just decided, I don't think Sherry Lansing ever even read the book, but this one guy just decided, we can't publish this book. And Michael's like, well, I can take that out or rewrite it or whatever, if that's your objection to the book. But it was like they wouldn't even respond to him. So the book got canceled by Pocket Books, but Michael got his lawyers to get the studio to agree that the rights would revert to him, that he would own the book and not Paramount, which they would have under the contract with Pocket Books, right? So I remember years later, Michael was still trying to figure out how to get this book out to the fans. He wanted the fans to have it, and he really wanted it to be a guide for young writers who are interested in writing in the business. And Michael was a big supporter of his alma mater, the University of North Carolina, and he started a writers program and helped fund it. And he wanted this book to be like a textbook for students who wanted to learn about writing for feature films. And so when he got sick with cancer years later, one of the things that will always stick with me as long as I live is he made me promise to him that somehow I would get the book out to the fans. He wanted them to have it, even if it was for free. And after he passed away, I did make multiple attempts serendipitously. See, I can't pronounce those words either. And like there were fans who were obsessed with wanting to help put it out online. So I'm like, all right, here's the files. I have all the files. So, but then as soon as it would go up online, they would get cease and desist letters from Paramount Studios. And I was thinking to myself, Paramount doesn't own the rights to this book, so they can't tell you to cease and desist. But of course, we couldn't really say that because I didn't want to make it obvious that I was the one trying to get the book out. And over the years, then even Michael's personal estate lawyers started sending out this cease and desist letters. So I'm like, well, what are you gonna do? His estate owns the rights to the book. So finally, when Sandra got the book published, I was very happy that it was finally out. I don't think it had quite the broad range of distribution because it's a very expensive book, but at least it's out there.
I think I got it through one of your earlier efforts, but
and I think Michael really talks about some interesting inside stuff in the book, and you really get an idea of what it was like working on Next Generation and writing for these characters and all the different issues from every angle, the pressures from the cast, pressures from the studio, pressures from the fans. Michael was one of the people when I worked for him, when he was writing this movie specifically. You have to go back to the 1990s, mid 1990s, and think the internet was still in its infancy then. And some of the Star Trek groups, it's not like, I don't know if Facebook was even started then, but anyway, there was a few groups on the internet, like this friend of mine, Steve Pretzler, had started I can't remember what it was called. He had his own website where people could post and put their opinions and stuff. Michael was obsessed about going on his web page every single day to see what the fans were talking about or speculating that this movie would be. So Michael really took in all of this feedback from the fans and everybody when he was developing this movie. And I don't think a lot of people in Hollywood do that kind of thing.
With all the social media now, I feel it's more common to hear people say, like, I'm ignoring all internet feedback whatsoever while I'm doing this.
I mean, Michael was so impressed with this kid's Facebook page, or not Facebook, his own website, that he invited him to come to the studio. And he, at the time, he lived in Florida with his parents because he was a teenager, and he got permission to come to Hollywood. And I think we invited him to the premiere of the movie, because at some point he was still a minor when we went to Las Vegas. I remember that, and it was like we were his guardian, so he could be there for the premiere of the movie.
Chaperone, right? Isn't that the more French word?
Yeah, it's pretty hysterical. But yeah, Michael was obsessed with that feedback from the fans.
And sorry, could you shout out the title of that book again? Because I don't think we said it.
Well, I'm trying to remember. It was called Fade In, the writing of Star Trek Insurrection.
Okay, Luke seems to be on it. Again, I actually read it twice and enjoyed it. It is, because I think a lot of books get into a little more of the star speak, where this one really got into sort of the gears and grinding it takes to make a major movie and work out the script and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, you were close. Fade In, the making of Star Trek Insurrection.
Okay. I thought it was the writing of, because
that's why I put it to Google and Google corrected me. So
it really was more about the writing of it and the process, because Michael Piller was always a very focused person who would spend hours behind his computer and didn't want to be disturbed, and he wasn't a super socializer at parties and stuff. So this, sorry, my Alexa's talking to me in the background. I guess I triggered her somehow, but I actually call her computer. Anyway, Michael really, I think, exposes a lot of his internal thought processes in this book. I think it's a really great read if you really want to know what's going on in the mind of a writer. He really got into all the details of what inspired him, what frustrated him, what scared him. It was like all those things that you never really got from him in person or in that book. Don't you think? You read it.
Yeah. No, that's the whole point. Like, just because he'd go through like each iteration of the script drafts, which you never really hear people do much. Like, oh, well, this changed to this, and like you see all the elements change. So usually it's like, oh, there were 5 drafts, and that's.
And he would also admit, like, when things didn't work, like this didn't work, and he wasn't afraid to just be honest about.
I might be getting it wrong. I think I mentioned like Riker crashing on Romulus, and I might be mixing up. It might have been War for all I know. But the whole point is, this sequence would be so insanely expensive. You can't start the movie this way, especially in the 90s.
Well, one of the things Michael always used to tell writers who wanted advice, and he even said it to me once when I was working on Yesterday's Enterprise. He's like, don't think about the budget when you're writing. Just write the story you want to see, and leave the budget and all that to the producers and the people who have to build the sets and design the costumes. They'll figure that out. if we can't have 10,000 extras, we'll fake it somehow. But
let's see, write which one, then pull in the limitations where you have to. So
I mean, and for me, when we were writing yesterday's Enterprise, Trent and I think I slipped into that zone where you're thinking, oh, we have to think about the budget and we can't do this and we can't do that. So when they actually redesigned the whole bridge and did all those cool things in the episode, I was actually really surprised because they went beyond what I thought they could do. And so I always thought Michael's advice was great. Don't limit your creativity to a budget.
I think we've basically gotten our thoughts on the Insurrection, but I'll just throw the ball out to anyone that wants to have a final thought on that.
They did make a Beanie Baby of the pet, but you can't buy it anymore.
My mom might have it. She collected Beanie Babies.
I did remember that there was a toy.
Yeah.
Or something. And do you guys remember Tamagotchis?
Oh yeah. Oh.
He's gonna get one for you. And my daughter, she's when she was 9 a couple of years ago, she wanted an old school one, but we couldn't find it.
So Tamagotchis were huge during the making of Star Trek Insurrection, and Michael Pillar's daughter, Brent, wanted one so bad. And of course, as Michael's executive assistant, whenever Michael's daughter wanted something, Eric was going to find it for her. Same thing with Michael's wine collection. Even though he was allergic to wine, he collected wine, and whenever he read something in the Wine Spectator that he had to have, it was always the one that was sold out. And I mean, I used to make calls to New Zealand and places trying to find wine for him. But anyway, his daughter wanted a Tamagotchi, and somehow, I don't know how I did it, I even got him tickets to the Final Four basketball tournament one time and a hotel room at the last minute in a sold out town. But anyway, his daughter wanted a Tamagotchi and I found it. And she was so happy and Michael was so happy. Next thing I know, Rick Berman's calling. I need a Tamagotchi. I'm like, what am I, the Tamagotchi hunter?
Oh, yeah.
Anyway,
yes. That's a game
yes,
too.
you are.
and Michael had written the screenplay. I can't remember what it was called, but it was sort of a comedy, sci-fi, Back to the Future kind of movie. And in it, he had this personal assistant that was like a 9th generation Tamagotchi computerized personal assistant. It was a big thing back then.
Well, we've done Spice Girls, Tamagotchis, Beanie Baby. This has been a real trip back to the 90s.
And Star Trek.
Who knew there was so much culture?
Yeah. But I guess wrapping up, Eric, I know your internet presence has your Boldly Going blog, if you want to talk about that or anything else you have going on at the moment.
Well, I do have my Boldly Going blog. I also have the Boldly Going Facebook page, which is mostly about my wife and I's travel adventures in France. But I do throw in some Star Trek stuff from time to time, and I am out in the social network universe if anyone wants to find me. We also have my Yesterday's Enterprise Facebook page, which is all devoted to Star Trek. So if anyone wants to find me there, that's where I'm at.
Nice.
Luke, you want to do the thing?
Yep, you can find this podcast on Twitter at MLSFSpod. You can also find Matt's music at rovingsagemedia.bandcamp.com. If you've enjoyed the music you've heard in this podcast, that's where it comes from. You can find my other podcast, speaking of the 90s, I do a Pokemon podcast. You can find that on Twitter at LukeLovesPKMN. And for all of our podcasts, if you want to support them, you can go to patreon.com/podcastius.
That is it. So I guess we're going to wrap up this Insurrection for the day. And Eric, of course, thank you again for joining us. Cannot get that perspective from anyone else.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thanks again. Cheers.
Who's closing the door today? Is it you? Is it me?
I haven't thought of one.
Let's just stop time.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm actually going to cut it there.
Right.
Yeah.